Welcome back to Collie Conversations, our quick, focused 15-minute Friday Q&A where I answer your real-life Border Collie questions and help you make sense of the behaviour you're seeing at home and out on walks. Every week we take one simple idea, understanding your collie better so life gets calmer, easier and more connected. Now today's session is actually a little different because we're focusing on the Black Friday Unleashed offer and the questions that have come up since last night's webinar. Now, if you're on the fence, curious, or trying to decide whether it's the right fit for you and your collie, this is the moment to get clarity. We're going to run through the most common questions I've received, including is Unleashed suitable for nursery or primary level collies? Will it help with specific triggers, cars, footballs, livestock or other dogs? How quickly should you expect to see progress? And is it still worth joining if you tried other trainers or recall games? So, my goal today is simple. A short, clear Q&A that helps you decide confidently whether to jump in before the Black Friday bonuses close. Let's get into it. Alexa, timer for 15 minutes, please.
15 minutes starting now.
All right, so timer set. So firstly, what if my collie is still in nursery or primary? Is this too advanced? So as I say, we talked last night in the webinar about the different levels of, where our dogs are at. And no is the short answer. This is exactly who the program is built for, because what the program does is it gives you step-by-step layers, so you always know what level to train at and also when to move up as well. So nursery dogs are just starting a bit earlier on the pathway. That's perfect. And by the way, when we talk about nursery or primary school dogs, we're not talking about dogs' ages here so much. Whether or not you are bringing home a new rescue dog or maybe you're fostering a dog, they can be a baby puppy. We would all start at the same point because essentially it's about building that connection, that relationship that will then help us when we're out and about in the real world. So the next question was, can this still help if my dog's biggest problem is, and a few people had different problems, so cars was one of them, people playing football, other dogs, livestock if they're out and about in the country, those sorts of things. The short answer again is yes. Triggers, like any of those that we've just described, are just something that the dog is having an emotional reaction to. And the goal of the program is to teach your collie how to think in excitement. All right, because that's essentially the issue that they're having. When adrenaline fills their body, their brain just pops out from wherever it is. And so it applies whether or not the trigger has wheels, it applies whether or not it has feathers, hooves, legs, whether or not it's a ball. The process is the same. What we're looking to do is make sure that that foundation is really strong, and then from there we can go out into the world and test our training. One of the questions was, how quickly will I see change? And this one, in a funny sort of way, is difficult because it will depend a little bit on how much time you have. But the key thing is that I have seen in doing like a week's challenge with people that small shifts, just like little things that they've done, so in the course of like the 5-day challenge, often show within a week or two. All right, they often show by the end of the week, more than anything. So the big transformation comes from repeating those successful layers and not rushing. So my advice would always be, make sure you're pretty solid at that before you start testing it, so that your dog is confident, that you're confident, because slow and successful always builds faster than fast and overwhelmed, because humans and dogs do not learn when everything is going at 100 miles an hour and they're feeling overwhelmed. Now, one really good question that I had was, will this work even if I've already tried trainers or different classes? And the simple answer is yes, absolutely it will, because classes are often just focused on obedience, all right? And whilst obedience is important, I'm not going to say that it's not, it doesn't take into account arousal. It doesn't take into account the fact that life gets exciting or interesting or potentially worrying for some Border Collies. So what we are aiming to do is think about why our behaviours start to collapse when we're out and about. It isn't a question that you've failed in the past with what you've done. You just didn't have the right framework in place. And my framework is all about making sure that the dog understands at different levels, as opposed to expecting them to go into like a PhD level situation when they've only got a sort of primary school level understanding of what we're asking them to do. So that's what Unleashed is all about, is making sure that they've got all of the details in place. Now, this was a good question. This is one, it's been a really busy week, so I understand and I hear this question. What if I don't have much time to train? And as I say, good question, because this week my dogs have not seen very much of me because it's been busy. But the key thing is, one of my friends once said this to me, because I was saying to her, "Oh, I'm so busy." Theme of my life, so busy. I haven't really done any dog training with the dogs. I feel bad. And she said, "You know what? Like, you're training all of the time." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You're training all of the time. Like, you don't need long sessions, because the things that you teach, and this is where Unleash comes from, the foundation is you're doing these little things all of the time with the dogs. So be it, I expect you to wait before coming out the front door. I expect you not to be jumping up, say, when I'm preparing your meals. Say, I expect you to remain on your bed when, maybe we're having tea. All of these little things, they're not long sessions, and they're not necessarily like, I'm thinking, oh, I'm training, but they're intentional. They've got a purpose. Dogs understand the purpose. I understand the purpose. And 5 minutes of a successful session like that teaches much more than 30 minutes of, complete chaos, as you can imagine. And the beauty of the Black Friday offer is you've got lifetime access. So there's no rush that you have to get it all done before. I mean, God forbid that you were trying to get it all done before Christmas. I wouldn't expect that. But, you can spread it out. You've got lifetime access. There's no panic. Now, one of the other questions that I had was, will this help at home as well as outdoors? Because lots of the things, I guess, that we focused on in the webinar last night were the issues that people have with their Border Collies when they're out and about. So, for example, not taking treats away from home, treats not working and distracting dogs when they're out and about, them seeing things in the distance, running off, all of, that kind of thing. Short answer again, it's yes, because the thing that we really think about in the Unleashed Vault particularly is we look at why our dogs might, we look at the outside of the obedience bit, we look at the nervous system and how we begin to regulate that, because in order to start learning new things, we all, be that human, be that dog, we need to be in a good place to be able to learn. And when the nervous system begins to regulate, behaviour across the board becomes much more consistent. So when we get a dog that is calmer at home and is able to think and learn at home, then we will have a clearer brain outside. It always works that way. And just yesterday I was talking to one of my club students, and we were talking about the fact that her dog is probably not getting enough rest. And, he's struggling. He's quite reactive to things. But you or I are quite reactive to things, aren't we? When we don't have enough sleep. So, yeah, making sure that we've got the home bit is a really good basis, because that's where everything else is going to stem from outside. And the reason then that learning starts to work out and about is because what we do is we're transferring that learning that has become strong at home into those outdoor areas, and what they're doing is they're learning how to cope, not just what to do. And it's really important to give them some coping skills alongside the obedience pieces of this is what I actually want you to do, if that makes sense. Now, I know that people often worry that, where will I get started? How will I know what order to follow and where to start? So the pathway's already mapped out. So it's set up in such a way you can jump ahead if you want to. But my suggestion would be to follow the program through as I've laid it out. So you've got the basics and self-control that starts on week 1. You've then got week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, plus a couple of bonus weeks in week 7 and 8 for you as well. It's mapped out, so I would suggest that you go through it in the way that I've laid it out. And you begin at the level your dog is currently working at, and then you follow the next step when you're ready, and then so on and so from there. And there's no guesswork involved, because what I suggest that you do is you video your training, and then you compare your training back to the instructional video, and you go, okay, do I need to tweak it? Does it look like I'm on the right track? And then, as I say, when you feel like it's going well, you move forward and you just progress. So if today made things make a little bit more sense in terms of what Unleash can offer you and your Border Collie, it's £47 for lifetime access. It's got every training plan that I could think of that you could potentially need in terms of recall, in terms of settle, in terms of building self-control. A huge bank of webinars for you to dive into, which go into a lot of things quite a bit further. If you're ready to jump in, I'd love to support you. And it's just as simple as I will pop a link to the sign up page underneath this video. And if you're watching this via YouTube later, or if you're watching it or listening even via the podcast, then just head on into the Facebook group, of which there's a link in the show notes, and you can come join us in Unleash Self Study. But I think, as I say, your dog will thank you for it more than perhaps they would a new toy or a new lead or whatever. This investment in kind of really understanding them and what training is going to be valuable to them, I think it's going to make a lot of sense to both of you. Okay, we've actually finished before our 15 minutes. This is almost unheard of. This is unusual for me. I love the sound of my own voice. But we will wind it up there. And thank you for being here and caring enough about your collie to keep learning. If you want your question answered in a future session, please just drop it under the regular Thursday morning post in this group. That's where I pick up any questions from each week. And if you're watching on or listening on replay, it would mean a lot if you could rate or review the podcast on the platform that you're using. It helps more collie owners find this support, and it genuinely makes a difference. Anyway, I will see you next Friday for another quick Q&A. Have a brilliant week with your collie and a lovely weekend. Take care.